Good evening, my name is Alex and I'll be your host tonight as we deep dive into some of the world's greatest mysteries. You're listening to Mysteries After Midnight.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
Anyone that has spent any time on the internet looking into cryptids has probably come across this viral video at one point or another. When I first saw this video, I was intrigued to say the least. Since its internet debut, the cryptid community has been pretty divided on what it could be, or if it's even real. Today, we're going to take a deeper look into the mystery of the Fresno Nightcrawlers. Also known as the Fresno Aliens, or the Haunted Pants, the Fresno Nightcrawlers are strange white creatures standing only about 1.5 meters tall on average, with long legs, no arms, a short torso, and a small head. The facial features are practically non-existent, with a few people claiming only to see a pair of black eyes on their faces in the video footage. It's been noted that these creatures typically travel in pairs, sometimes with one Nightcrawler being taller than the other. While it has been claimed that these sightings started sometime in the 90s, I wasn't able to find much in the way of witness reports or news articles about it. In general, information about the Fresno Nightcrawlers is pretty limited. Due to the lack of evidence of any such sightings occurring in the 90s, I will disregard it as hearsay. The first potential witness-confirmed sighting actually took place in Manchester, Indiana in 2004, when a 17-year-old motorist witnessed a strange creature on the side of the road. It was humanoid in appearance, with a thin body and long legs. It moved in a disjointed and jerky manner, and stood over 6 feet tall. A second car also passed by the creature, and the elderly couple in it conferred with the first witness. All three agreed that what they had seen was definitely not human. Shaken, both cars drove out of the area together. On November 5, 2007, in Fresno, California, around 12:40 a.m., these bizarre beings were captured on security tape for the first time. The odd creatures were captured on the surveillance footage of local Fresno resident Jose. After many nights of his dogs incessantly barking, he decided to set up a security camera over his home's garage, hoping to see whatever animal or potential intruder was agitating his dogs. He was, once again, awakened by his dogs barking and rushed to check the security footage. He was startled to see a pair of strange white creatures resembling a pair of pants walking across his lawn. Jose rushed to wake up his brother, where they reviewed the footage together. Afterwards, his brother went outside to investigate and claimed to have found small footprints left behind by the little creatures. This rattled Jose so much that he called the police. The first creature was very slim and walked erect and rigidly upright, making small, stiff steps as it walked towards the garage. After it exited the frame a few minutes later, a second creature came into view, this one moving a bit more erratically. It was broader and walked with its legs spread further apart, still in a stiff manner, as a person might walk if they were trying not to bend their knees. The police nor the family could conclusively explain what was captured on the footage, only that it was incredibly bizarre. The local news got a hold of the story shortly after the initial report and contacted paranormal researcher Victor Camacho for answers. The news interview, as well as pieces of the original surveillance recording, were posted to Victor Camacho's YouTube channel on November 19, 2007. The interview is in Spanish, and unfortunately I do not speak Spanish, but I did my best to translate it with Veed and Google Translate. Please forgive any inaccuracies, as Google Translate is not always the best source for translation, especially relying on subtitle transcriptions from audio recordings, which may not be completely accurate. Quote, "Interesting and curious is what Victor Camacho says about these images captured from the first hour of this past Monday by the surveillance cameras of a Fresno Hispanic family.
Because the question of analyzing well, zooming in with a filter so that we can have a clearer image and be able to see if it is the face and head of this creature, or if it's a type of lavish hood, it has to be analyzed for that. We have people who are dedicated precisely to doing video analysis. We have Dr. Bruce May, who I saw, who is one of the eminences of video analysis in the United States. and he is the one who always supports us with analysis of the videos. There is no doubt that there is life outside our planet. This type of contact sightings, people call and mention that in these cases, there are countries that have research centers like Chile, like Argentina, and Brazil that have just opened its doors to the researchers inside the investigations they have done in the military. In other words, if the armed forces are investigating this, it is because there is something on his part. The person who recorded these images in Fresno says that in his house the dogs have become agitated as strongly as the night in which his cameras captured the images, but that he no longer wants to record the camera. No more.
It won't happen again or something?
Well, no, he's not going outside anymore, but I can't stop thinking about it.
End quote. 3 months later, Victor was permitted to conduct a personal investigation of Jose's yard, as well as interview him. As 3 months had passed since the event, there was no physical evidence left on the property. However, Camacho was able to get a better idea of the scale of these pant-like cryptids, determining them to be approximately 3 feet in height. He later presented his findings at the MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, conference. As Victor explained the footage, he was adamant that the strange creatures they were witnessing were genuine, as Jose seemed genuinely afraid of them during their interview, though he had no real idea what they could be, suggesting perhaps an extraterrestrial origin, or possibly Fae. In March of 2011, the Nightcrawlers were again captured on film, this time in Yosemite National Park. Caretakers had mounted some security cameras in an attempt to catch potential vandals. Instead, they captured footage of 2 humanoid creatures emerging from the brush and wandering through the trees. The creatures were small, pale, had no arms, and walked upright and rigid, similar to the ones seen in Fresno. This time, one of the beings was fairly smaller than the other. There had apparently been a few alleged sightings in both Fresno and Yosemite in the previous years, but they had never before been captured on film. Of course, the media latched on to the story, and once again, the Nightcrawlers became a hot topic in the cryptid community. On November 12, 2014, a Highland County resident and his wife were driving near Carmel, Ohio, when they spotted a strange creature along the road. The witness, a 60-year-old former Marine, claimed that while driving over a hill, a slim, 7-foot-tall, gray creature with muscular, backwards jointed legs came into view. He said that the being didn't seem to have any arms, and he promptly sketched out what he had seen upon arriving home. Ron McGlone, a MUFON investigator, met with the witness for an interview. The former Marine stated, quote,
"We recently bought a place in the Fort Hill area. We first noticed after about 30 days of living here that we suddenly have a perfect circle that stays fresh green no matter what weather in our front yard. On Friday night, we were driving home. After turning on Carmel Road, which leads to our road, we went around the curve by the Carmel Church and then up a small incline, and approximately 10 feet over the incline and in front of our truck, the alien ran across the road and into the woods."
End quote. His wife also chimed in, saying, quote, "My husband saw it. He is a skeptic, almost 60 years old, and a proud Marine. He wouldn't have admitted to seeing it if he hadn't been in shock. I had him draw it for me when we got to the house. He says it was asphalt gray, our asphalt is gray, and about 7 feet tall, no arms that he could see, but muscular in the legs area, no jawline, and its legs were bent backward, and it leaned forward as it ran." End quote. Ron McGlone believed there may have been many sightings of this creature in the area, but very few reports. The Highland County Press put out a forum post on December 18, 2014, asking that people around the Highland County, Ohio area contact McGlone about their own encounters. 44 comments have been added to the thread since 2014, some of them as recent as March of 2022. While very few comments on the thread seem to pertain to the creature in question, a few of them did reference similar creature sightings. Some people claim to have witnessed the creature in the woods, on their roof, or even in dreams. One potential sighting even dated back to 1956. Someone else claimed to have seen a similar creature in the Rocky Fork area in October of 2010. While the majority of the descriptions of this mysterious Ohio cryptid differ greatly from those seen in Fresno and Yosemite, it's still odd, and I believe even if it isn't the same species as the Fresno Nightcrawler, there is something there. One commenter on the thread, going only by SR, had this to say about their encounter, quote, "I have seen the face of one of these, I think, as it was very gray in color, no jawline, and spoke actually with a mouth, no lips though. But the startling part of the face was this. It had a fold that was vertical in the upper eyelid. I was woken up by a noise at night and it spoke. I have since then wondered what the heck that was. Not sure if it's a ghost, alien, or what. I tend to think it might have been an alien since the upper eyelid, the head was covered by a gray cloth-looking hood, was not straight across like ours, but in the middle had a slit that was closed. I am sure that slit could open up. If vertical and horizontal slits in two eyelids, then if opened up completely, my guess would be that a person would see an entirely round eye. Is there something more to that, though? It makes you wonder. I mentioned the sighting where I live, in a very rural wooded area near a mountain, to the holiness evangelical type pastor of the little country church I have been going to for over a year now. He preached to the congregation about a gray being with a hood that walked into his den when he had been drunk one night, and it woke him up, and he felt very afraid, and thought it was the death angel. He actually told them about that personal experience. That was the same week I had seen the gray thing. Are they aliens? It makes sense they would be in a rural wooded area. I did not want to tell anyone else about this because it's too strange." End quote. Most people seem to describe the creature they saw as either gray or brown in color, which doesn't exactly match the descriptions of the Nightcrawlers, but with the overlap in certain features, I can't rule out that these beings are related in some way. Of course, many people are adamantly opposed to the idea of some unknown cryptid or alien creature wandering around Ohio at all, claiming it to be simply a misidentified blue heron, deer, or just a hoax completely. One person even pleaded in his comment for people to stop trying to make something out of such a ridiculous story, solely to keep Discovery Channel investigators out of Ohio. Fred Thacker said, quote,
"It's like the Mothman story down in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. I was an eyewitness to the Silver Bridge collapsing into the Ohio River, loss of 41 lives. Shortly thereafter, the Mothman story came out as this winged man flying over the bridge with a pin in his hand. Bullshit. I had a clear view of the bridge. All I saw was grief. The Mothman story is no more than a tall tale to bring tourists into Point Pleasant and an insult to the folks who lost their lives and their families that day, in my opinion. I was serving with the U.S. Coast Guard station at Point Pleasant on my way home from work."
End quote. In 2015, a comment was posted to the comment section of the Para Breakdown YouTube video about the Fresno Nightcrawlers. While the stance of the YouTuber was that the Nightcrawlers were easily hoaxed, this particular viewer had quite a tale to share claiming otherwise. User Wayne Hodge said, quote,
"I have seen 2 other videos of these things. One was of them crossing a field, and in the other they were walking through the woods. I'm not going to say whether these things are real or fake, but the first time I saw a video of them, it freaked me totally out, and I'll tell you why. When I was 14, and that's been 46 years ago now, I was visiting a family friend on her farm. We were sitting on her front porch talking, and from there you looked out across the pasture fields and the woods. I was just more or less sitting there watching the cattle graze as we talked. It took a minute or so for me to realize that the cattle had stopped grazing and were all looking at something to the left of the pasture field. As I turned to look, all I caught was just a simple glimpse of something white going into the woods. I watched for several minutes to see if it came back out, but nothing, and then the cattle returned to grazing. I asked the woman if she had seen that, and she asked what. I told her what I thought I had seen, and her face just went white as a sheet. She went inside and fixed herself a fresh cup of coffee and came back out and sat down and said she had something to tell me that she'd never told anyone else. That's when she related her story to me that took place a couple of decades earlier. Her husband was a truck driver, and he was gone about 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. She said she was sitting on the porch one day, working on some green beans for supper and watching her 3 daughters play in the yard. She said she caught movement out of the corner of her eye and turned toward the pasture. She said that what she saw scared the shit out of her. She said it was some sort of creature that just looked like a pair of legs with what resembled a head on top of them. According to her, it took the thing about 15 minutes to cross the field, which was about 50 yards, and go into the woods. She added that that was the first and last time she ever saw it till I mentioned it. I don't know what year that would have been, but it would have been a very long time ago, as when my mom was 14, she used to babysit this woman's kids, and my mom was 14 in 1943. Even though I wasn't sure, I just kind of felt like she was yanking my chain. Then when I saw the same creature she described on Fact or Faked, I nearly messed my pants. If I had seen that show beforehand, I would have left her house long before dark that day, as I had a 1.5 mile walk to get home, and there was nothing between her house and mine but woods and pasture land. But I do know that there are some strange, unexplainable things in this world, as I've seen them myself, and science discovers new things every day.
End quote. In 2017, a video was posted to YouTube supposedly capturing a seemingly large Fresno Nightcrawler walking around Poland on a handheld camcorder. The footage is shaky, and the Nightcrawler can only be seen for a couple of seconds. While I cannot conclusively say whether or not this footage is genuine, I can say that while it bears a resemblance to the Fresno Nightcrawlers, its movements are much slower and more calculated, and its form doesn't match exactly. It looks much more like a person wearing a costume and stilts, or long poles to keep their legs straightened, rather than a genuine organic life form. Across most of the witness reports, the consensus for this particular cryptid is that it is typically thin, pale in color, has no arms and long legs, has a small head with black eyes, is relatively short with a few exceptions, and is often seen traveling in pairs. No one is certain of what determines the size differences between creatures, whether it is age, gender, superiority, or another factor. The pant-like body structure is also up for debate as to whether it is a suit or the creature's skin. So what exactly is this peculiar being? Some popular potential explanations are an extraterrestrial, an unidentified primate species, a misidentified deer standing upright, pants or a puppet on a wire, a bird, or a person wearing large pants and walking on stilts. Some theorists have even gone so far as to categorize it as an extraterrestrial insectoid due to the ginger daddy-long-leg-esque manner in which it walks. A few reports even mark a resemblance to a praying mantis. Others believe they may be extraterrestrial robots sent to observe or collect data on Earth. With so few close encounters to reference, paranormal theorists have developed a wide range of theories. Of course, the fact that this seems to be a creature with very few official eyewitness reports, yet has somehow managed to be captured on film multiple times in regularly populated areas, raises the question of its authenticity. Many people believe this to be nothing more than a simple hoax. Paranormal investigators and experts have reviewed the footage, most noting that it would be difficult to replicate. The case was even picked up by paranormal reality show Fact or Faked, in which they tried to debunk the video. The crew traveled to Jose's home, interviewed him, and then began their experiments. They started simply, using a child as their potential nightcrawler. The footage they captured didn't resemble the original in any way. Moving on to the puppet test, they ran a mechanical puppet along a wire. This time, the puppet was too wobbly to match Jose's video. Upon adding similar white clothing as those featured on the Nightcrawlers to the puppet, they found that the puppet was a bit more stable, but still didn't quite match. They then decided to walk the puppet across the lawn to guide it and prevent it from wobbling, in which the puppet master would be edited out of the final video. This also proved not to be a conclusive match. Determining the footage to be genuine based on their experiments, they decided to investigate the area to see if there were any Nightcrawlers nearby. Aside from reporting several electronic malfunctions and one camera falling seemingly on its own, there was no real definitive evidence of Nightcrawlers lurking in the woods of Fresno. On the contrary, Phil Poling, known for his Para-Breakdown YouTube channel, believes the footage to be 100% fake. He believed that the footage of the two Nightcrawlers were simply just two separate attempts by Jose to puppet a convincing cryptid. Poling decided to personally investigate his theory in his own backyard, where he constructed a puppet and hooked it to a wire, where he then guided the legs with fishing line to make the creature walk. It took him 3 attempts to finally get the movement he was looking for. He then edited the footage with film grain and compression techniques to obscure the wire. The final is fairly convincing. It certainly provides a strong basis for a hoax. There are minor movement differences between the Poling hoax and Jose's footage, but they are close enough that I can't take a puppet hoax off the table. The original footage was shot at night on an infrared security camera in 2007. The output for this system was VHS tape, meaning the footage was already grainy, pixelated, and compressed. A reporter from the local news station contacted Jose to get a copy of the original tape. However, neither could figure out how to get one, so she settled for filming Jose's television as the footage played. This brought the quality down even further. Unfortunately, this is the only video available from the event, since most security cameras tape on a loop and typically tape over themselves within a predetermined time frame. It also raised suspicions when Jose refused to let MUFON do a thorough investigation of his property after the event, instead waiting 3 months before allowing Victor Camacho to conduct his investigation. This would leave plenty of time for any physical evidence from the hoaxing to be removed or disposed of. Not to mention, the film quality had already been so drastically reduced by the compression and being filmed on a separate camera that any evidence of puppet rigging wouldn't be visible amongst the film grain. Jose also wished to remain anonymous out of fear that people may harass him for interviews or from believing he had faked the whole thing. But the way investigators interpreted their interview with the Fresno witness, they believe him to be telling the truth about what he saw, but that doesn't rule out the possibility that someone else was pulling a prank on Jose. If the footage was fake, Jose wasn't in on it. In the case of the Yosemite footage, video analysts claimed that the film could be easily reproduced using CGI animation and a person on stilts. Although even among professionals there is some debate, some claiming that the footage hasn't been tampered with at all. So if these videos haven't been tampered with, and there are genuine witness reports, that must indicate that there is a real creature out there existing amongst us. But what is it? The short answer is, we honestly have no idea. People have been grasping at straws trying to rationalize this creature. Due to the odd structure of its body and its strange movement, relating it to any earthly animal is out of the question. Some researchers believe it to have an origin in Native American folklore, referencing strange, supposedly indigenous wood carvings resembling the Nightcrawlers. They say these cryptids are actually spirits that predate man by thousands of years, that are resurfacing now in an attempt to get us to reconnect with nature. It is claimed that they are a swamp-dwelling creature, whose long legs help them easily traverse the boggy terrain. The legend of the Nightcrawlers supposedly has deep roots with the local indigenous tribes. While this would wrap the whole story up into a beautiful bow, there are a few things that don't make sense. If this spirit truly makes its home in the swamp, how come none of the footage seems to make any reference to their swamp home? Their pale bodies or clothes are always seen clean and dry. And if it is a spirit, why does it seem to have a more physical body than a spiritual one? Not only this, but there is apparently no such reference in Native American folklore to creatures or nature spirits resembling the Fresno Nightcrawlers, at least that I was able to find, and that the wood-carved statues are just metropolitan art set outside of a California DMV. Perhaps instead they are just extraterrestrials, as some researchers theorize. While these cryptids are humanoid in appearance, people find it hard to grasp that a true humanoid creature wouldn't have arms. And while I agree that from an evolutionary standpoint it is rather odd, we must remember just how diverse life forms on Earth are. After all, birds exist, and they regularly walk around without flapping their wings. That said, given the movement and body structure of the Nightcrawlers, I may be more inclined to believe they are some kind of extraterrestrial robot, rather than an organic alien. This would explain the lack of facial features and arms, and also its rigid movements. Though it does leave one to wonder why robots would be sent in pairs rather than on their own. Surely something inorganic like that doesn't need a partner to watch its back. When I first started researching the Fresno Nightcrawlers, I honestly believed it would be a simple cut-and-dry hoax case. But the more information I found, the more footage I watched, the more confused and unsure of myself I became. It's easy to believe it to be fake when you have only the viral footage as your reference, but reading multiple witness reports, people describing similar creatures dating back decades, really makes you wonder, are these little creatures really out there somewhere? Even if the videos are faked, so many people claiming to have seen beings resembling the Nightcrawlers certainly hints that there is something here on Earth we can't explain. Hopefully one day we'll have answers. Until then, the case of the haunted pants will remain unsolved. This has been the Fresno Nightcrawler Mystery. Thanks for joining us. If you have any questions or would like to share your own personal paranormal experiences, email us at mysteries.am@gmail.com. You might just hear your story on the show. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at MysteriesAM and Instagram at mysteries_after_midnight to stay updated on new episodes and behind-the-scenes content. If there is a specific mystery you would like to hear on the show, tweet or DM us about it and we may just make it an episode. I would like to extend a special thanks to Ron Paquet for recording additional voices for the show, and a special thanks to listeners like you. From the Mysteries After Midnight team, stay safe out there.